All right. It's a very big day for me. For those of you watching, listening, I imagine it's big-ish day for you, trying to build some intrigue and interest in this podcast and what I'm doing. It's been a minute. Really, it's been a minute since I've actually sat down in front of a camera and recorded content of this style. I've done this before several times for a bunch of different things, but never for books. So I am very excited to be here, to be in this set, and just really excited to kick things off. This has been a long time coming, I'm not gonna lie. I've always thought about doing something like this in a different space. I stopped podcasting a couple years ago and have always really been itching to get back into it. So we're getting back into it, and what we are getting into, what you are getting into, what I am getting into is a book-related podcast, and I'm really excited to bring it to you guys. We're gonna talk about all things books, what I'm reading, what I've read, my reading habits as a kid, what I read as a kid, and how that's influenced what I'm reading today. We'll talk to different book creators. It's one of my hopes to talk to different book creators and get a look inside of their minds, their habits, their creative processes, how they interact with reading in the creative space, why they read what they read, different things of, following reading trends, reading stuff that they like versus reading stuff that is popular, reading as a chore versus reading for fun, because it can be a chore at times if you don't limit yourself and kind of brace yourself as you make content about books. And I think that's true for just about any creative space that you're in. And we're also going to be talking to some authors. I have 3 authors already lined up that are excited to come onto the show, and I'm very excited for that. But we're going to really dive deep into talking to some of these authors. We're going to talk about the books that they've written, their writing process, what has formed and shaped the way that they write, the sort of why behind their writing, what shaped them as writers growing up with what they read and who they read. And I think really just at the core of it, it's the why behind the writing and that process, what it felt like to finish that first book, how long it took them to finish that first book, and the journey forward for them. And I really could not be more excited to begin this journey with you all, to begin this journey myself. It's going to be really fun and exciting for all of us. So, it's without any further ado that I officially welcome you to an all-new Bookish podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dog-Eared. Now, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, tuning into me for the first time, who don't necessarily, know me or my content, I'm going to give a brief introduction of who I am, just so you get to know me a little bit more personally. We're going to dive into that here in a second. I'm going to talk about myself in the creative space in this bookish community, how that all happened. Then we're going to go over some recent reads, current reads. I'm going to recap the month of October for you guys, and then just a look ahead. So, hi, my name is Parker Rogers. I am a 23-year-old man. I live in Texas. I graduated college this past May with a degree in media communication with a minor in English. English has always been something that I've actually really had a love-hate relationship with. I remember back in high school, I would always say that I hated English, just like the reading portion of it, because, man, it's so subjective and you can pull a lot of different things from the same text. I could read something and get one message, and John Doe over here could read the same thing and get something completely different. And that was something that I didn't really care for, because I thought, well, my teachers are just trying to pull a bunch of random things out. Didn't really enjoy it too much. I currently work professionally in the creative space, in the creative industry. Believe it or not, I actually work at a cowboy church. I know it's weird for a lot of people to hear cowboy church. They don't necessarily know what that means. It's really cool. Trust me. It's really cool. I recently made a video about working at a cowboy church. So if you're interested, go watch that and you can see a glimpse kind of into that whole deal, that whole process. I'm their social media specialist. I run all of their socials. I do a lot of social work for them, and I also get cross-trained in, photo and video and all things media. That's, that was my degree. That's what I wanted to do. And I was lucky enough to land on my feet right out of college and be in a space where I was able to do that. So I really enjoy my job there. Previously, before getting into all of this, I was a football player. I played college football. I played professional football in Europe. Football was the biggest part of me for a very long time. Oddly enough, it wasn't my first real love as a hobby. That was actually theater and musical theater. I did that for about 10 to 11 years growing up. I really, really enjoyed being on the stage and being in that community, being able to get the opportunity to act like somebody else. I always thought that was so fun, getting all these different personas and living those out and making characters your own. That was something that I really enjoyed. And that's why a lot of this stuff comes a lot more naturally and easier for me, is because I have that background in acting and I have that background in the theater community. So making that transition from, on stage to on camera wasn't as jarring or as hard for me as a lot of people would think. But football was a big part of my life, and it really consumed me for the past, 10, 11 years. And I was just dedicating every day to it. Taking a look at my reading, how that took over to where it is now. I ended football really nearing on a year ago today, the end of November of 2024, start of December 2024. I ended, and I needed something to occupy my time. I needed something to occupy that space, and I needed something to do because every day was just chock full of doing football. And in 2024, I had set the goal for myself to read 20 books. And as I was working through the end of the year and finishing up that goal of reading 20 books, I was trying to make videos just to occupy my time. And one day during Christmas break, I was like, okay, I just finished my 20th book of the year. I like this whole social media deal. What can I do? I'll talk about the top 5 books from 2024. So every day from, I believe it was December 26th to December 31st, I did a video, top 5 books, counting down to the new year. And that was really fun. And I found a lot of excitement in that. Obviously, growth doesn't happen overnight, and it was really slow, and I didn't get much engagement on anything that I was posting at first, but I just had so much fun doing it. And I was like, you know what? I'll continue doing this. And it kind of became my personality from then on out. Trust me, I have a personality outside of books. I'm not just solely focused on reading and books and creating content for this book space. Although it is something that I love, but it's not something that consumes every single. Okay, I can't say that it doesn't consume every single bit of me because I read all the time, but I do things outside of reading. I like lifting. It's something that stuck with me athletically, just being in that space for so long. I like doing things outside, hiking, nature, fishing. That's something that I really enjoy. Hanging out with friends. Poker's a big thing. When I can get my poker group going, that's something that consumes a lot of my nights, especially in the summers. Everybody's home and everybody's around, and we just have a good time playing poker. That's something that I really enjoy. But yeah, getting into this creative space, I didn't know necessarily what it was when I started posting. I didn't even know that Bookstagram or Book Talk was a thing or such a big deal. I was really blind to it all and blindsided by it, which is actually, I guess, a blessing in disguise, because I've kind of come into this space with fresh eyes and fresh perspective. And that's been really cool. And I really wanted to see what reading looked like nowadays versus when I was a kid, because I really stopped reading heavy once I got into high school. High school got busy, classes were picking up, football was picking up, and I just kind of stepped away from it from a little bit. As a kid, my parents used to have this deal where I think they would make us read for 20, 30 minutes a day and then longer. I think if we got punished and they took away our electronics or something, they would make us read for an hour a day. And I actually found a lot of fun and excitement in that. So I started reading fantasy. That was like the biggest thing that I read. I remember at a very early age, actually, my sister one day, she was at the church that we went to was also a school, and there was a library, and she walked out of the library one day with Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. And I looked at the cover and I was like, wow, that cover is so cool. I want to read that. I think I was in first or second grade at the time. So I was just learning how to read chapter books. And as soon as I was able to, I picked up that series and read straight through it. And I had a great time. And then my sister went off to read Harry Potter. I remember we had the Harry Potter movies, and my dad was like, hey, you can watch these if you read the book. And that was like always a big thing. If my sister and I wanted to watch a new movie that had a book tied to it or was based off of a book, we would have to read the book before we watched the movie. So reading was always this thing that we did and that I enjoyed. Like I remember sitting up, I was in, it must have been second or third grade. I think it was second grade. I remember second grade sitting up underneath my covers reading The Chamber of Secrets, reading the ending of The Chamber of Secrets. I remember like my parents had put me to bed. It was past my bedtime. I had my little flashlight under the covers, just reading as much as I could. And eventually I ended up finishing that book. And that was really cool. It was always like such a thrill for me to read different stories like that and to dive into those worlds. And what I really found when I started reading was this idea of escapism. And that'll be something that we talk about later on. But at a young age, I was so captivated by escapism. And I started reading more stories. I started reading like A Series of Unfortunate Events. That was another series that I worked through at a young age. I remember reading The Inheritance Cycle also at a very young age. I think I read that probably around 2012 is when I started reading that. And I learned about dragons, and I learned about all these other like different fantasy worlds, and it was so fun and so cool. And then I started getting into, all these other different books and adventures and excitement. I mean, of course, as a kid, like there was, obviously I read like the Magic Tree House and stuff, but that's not really, no, that's classic literature. I think at this point we have to label some of those as like classic literature. A lot of people grew up with those. But it was always something that I loved and something that I admired. And then I would find myself writing my own stories. And writing was a space that I really enjoyed and something that I, had a lot of fun doing. So all of that long-windedness to say, once I came back to having a sort of exuberant amount of free time, I decided to pick reading back up again. And instantly that love was sparked for me again. I think what really got me back into reading in 2024, I went back and I reread all of Percy Jackson. I remember the first 5 days of 2025, I read all 5 Percy Jackson books, the first series, and then I went and I bought the Heroes of Olympus books, which I actually had as a kid. I remember waiting like for release days for those books, going and getting those books, being so excited to get those books. Very specifically, I remember getting the Mark of Athena as a gift for one of the shows that I was in when I was acting and doing theater. And, you would get gifts from people upon completion of the show. And it just so happened that the completion of that show fell around the release date for the Mark of Athena. And I got that. And then the next year, 2 years after that, however long it was, I got the House of Hades. And then I very vividly remember, I might have been in 5th or 6th grade at the time, waking up early and going to Walmart to get The Blood of Olympus and just being so engrossed into that book. I think I finished it within like a day and a half of getting it. And so start of 2025, going back and rereading all of those books and getting back into, was it 2025? No, it was 2024. Yeah, it was 2024. I was a junior in college. So getting back into those, reading all of those. And then I started exploring different new books that had come out because I had been away from this space for so long. I didn't know what authors were popular, what genres were popular, where the whole space had landed since I had been gone. And I started reading a myriad of different books. There was a lot of stuff obviously that I had read for college because I was an English minor, but I wanted to read books for fun and for pleasure. I ended up reading my first Stephen King book in 2024. I think that might have been the second best book that I read in 2024. It was Fairy Tale, a book that I absolutely adored. And then I have since read more Stephen King. I read a book called The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. And I think that was my number one book in 2024. And that got me into sort of this whodunit thriller type story. That one was interesting. Another really good, actually thriller book was The Last House on Needless Street. I really enjoyed reading that one. And it just has soared and flown since then. And I have not looked back at all. So since joining the Bookstagram Book Talk community, I have learned so much about where literature and fiction and fantasy and romance. I will be honest, I didn't know that romance books were a thing until this year. And I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I have enjoyed some pretty decent romance books this year. I think Just for the Summer, Part of Your World and Just for the Summer were two of the best romance books that I've read so far this year. Abby Jimenez, those were great. Part of Your World had me in tears near the end, and Just for the Summer was this really cool meta romance, people meeting online and then, blossoming into this romantic relationship and the twists and turns that come with, the tropes that we get into with romance books. It was really fun. I actually really enjoyed it. But all that to say, I got into a lot of different things this year, and my eyes have been open to new series, new authors, new genres. I didn't know that grimdark was a thing until I started really getting into reading this year. And now I've been totally consumed by the grimdark genre, and it's been really cool. I didn't know I don't think I had read many actual sci-fi books growing up, but now I've read a decent amount this year, and I've really enjoyed a lot of those sort of sci-fi fantasy books, and it's been really cool. So this year has been really big and formative to me, I guess, as an adult reading. I think at this point I've read almost 80 books this year, which if you had told me that a year ago, 2 years ago, if you had told me that at the beginning of college, I would have laughed in your face and said, there is no way that I am reading 50 plus books for fun in a year. That is just an astronomical number. I don't have the desire, the want, the attention span to do that. But as I've gotten back into the space, lo and behold, that's where I've found myself. And it's just so fun. Putting myself into different worlds, getting to meet different characters, getting to stay with different characters. It's been so fun. I guess some of the highlights so far since starting this journey into the bookish community, obviously the big one is the Stormlight Archive. Do I even really need to say anything about that? I remember seeing Sanderson a lot everywhere at the start of this journey because Wind and Truth was coming out. And I was like, who is this? What is this? Why is there so much hype and buzz? I need in. I was getting FOMO. And then so I remember, I think it was either at the end of December or the start of January, I bought the box set, the first 3 books, Mass Market. And I started reading the first book. And then, I was obviously intimidated by the size. I'd never read a book that was over 1,000 pages. I started reading it and then I set it down and was reading a couple other things, and I picked it back up. And once I picked it back up, I didn't put it down. It was insane. And I've really loved that since. Red Rising has been another one of those series that has been insane. Even though I've only read the first 2 books, it's been really fun to read. I think obviously Dungeon Crawler Carl has exploded. It absolutely exploded this year. And I started reading that early on this year and quickly has become one of my favorite series of all time. Stormlight's obviously one of my favorite series of all time. We'll get into that later. But yeah, just so many different books and series. Darkblade and Queen of Thieves have been another series that I've really enjoyed this year and have spent a lot of time in those series and in those worlds. It's been really fun. So I couldn't be happier with this sort of return to reading and this return to being in this space. It's been really cool. I've really enjoyed it. So yeah, being in this space is interesting. Starting out, not knowing what I was doing, not knowing what I was reading, not knowing if anybody would even care about the books that I was talking about. Like, it was intimidating. I'm not going to lie. It was intimidating. And it was also really intimidating being in college and putting myself out there on social media, because I mean, I'm sure a lot of you know, in the creators in this space, people, like actual people in your life, can just randomly stumble upon your, I don't even want to say it's private, but like kind of your private passion project that you do. So I had a bunch of people like stumble across my page and are like, Parker, what are you doing? Like, what are you talking about? Like, why are you reading so much? Yada, yada, yada. And then of course there's the people in the background that were like supporting me, like, dude, this is cool. Or professors that I would talk to, my English professors, like, hey, this is really cool. Like, here's a book recommendation. Here's something that you should do here, you know? And yeah, it's been really interesting. I've learned a lot about posting. I've learned a lot about filming, what works, what doesn't work. And just viewing reading as a passion versus reading as a pastime, versus reading as like a chore. Because there was a moment there at the middle of this year where I was reading and I was like, why am I reading this? Like, am I reading this because I want to, because I'm having fun, or because people expect to have a review of this book, or people expect me to read this book because it's what's popular right now? And I've learned to balance that. And I think in a later episode, we'll talk about that and get deeper into that. But all of that being said, it's been a really fun journey this year. And I'm really excited to continue, and to get deeper into this community, get deeper into a bunch of these series that I'm reading, start new series, and just explore different authors. There's a lot on the horizon for me as far as reading goes. But I think something else that I really want to hammer down on real quick is this idea of community. I have been so blessed to be brought into this community and to be made a part of this community so fast and so openly. I have made a ton of friends, which previously, like, I knew like people made friends online. Like, obviously, like you like, if you play video games, meet a random person in a lobby and you start, you know, teaming up with them and gaming with them, and you become friends. And I didn't think that was like possible over social media, really. I guess I just didn't pay close enough attention to the internals of social media to know like there's like actual communities that come together and are part, like a part of one another. And that has been so fun, meeting and connecting with a bunch of different people online who have similar interests, and then actually forming those interrelationships. That has been super fun. So to all the people who I have connected with and have started to become friends with, hi, hello. Thank you. You're important. You're valued. I really appreciate you all. And you have just made this year infinitely better. You have made my life infinitely better through this. I genuinely think that this is such a great gift and such a great community. There's so much to be like taken away just from being in this space, just from interacting with people. It's been really fun. It still is continuing to be really fun, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Like, genuinely would not trade it for anything. It's amazing. It's a blessing. So I do want to go over this previous month in reading. October, I think October might have been the biggest month of reading for me this entire year. I read 13 books in October, which to me that's it's a lot of books. So we are going to start at the very beginning. At the very beginning, we finished reading, let's see, which one was it? We finished reading An Orchestra of Treachery. That was a novella in the Queen of Thieves series. And then we read books 2 and 3 in the Queen of Thieves series, and then capped it off with book 3.5, where the Queen of Thieves and Darkblade merge and meet. So those three were really good. Then we read Academy of Outcasts by Larry Correa. That book was surprisingly really good. I read that one in one sitting. I started it and I didn't put it down. I read it on a Sunday. Really cool book. Really cool fantasy world. I definitely would recommend it. It was I got an ARC for it from Athon Books and Andy Peliquin. So shout out Andy, shout out Athon. That was really good. And then along with that, the book that I read directly after that, holy cow, this was, I know it's in the top 10. I don't know if it's in the top 5 of books that I've read so far this year. It's pretty dang close. It's Ironbound by Andrew Givler. That book was insane. I could not put it down. It's Red Rising-esque. It's progression fantasy. It's the Roman Empire meets Red Rising, basically. The magic system in it was really cool. It was inventive. It was new. You could also think of it as like Avatar, The Last Airbender meets Red Rising, because the magic system is elemental based. That's also really freaking cool. That one was really good. And I finished that book going, I need the second book now. I have no clue when Andrew's going to give us the second book, if he's working on it, what's going on there. But that was a great book. I gave that one 5 stars. I genuinely enjoyed that. Since it was October, I did want to get a little bit spooky. And so I read I think I read 3 spooky-ish books. The first one was 3 Bags Full. That was like a mystery. It was about sheep. Hearing a story through the perspective of a bunch of different sheep is confusing. It's weird. It was not my favorite read of the year so far. It's actually pretty low on the list for me so far this year. I didn't enjoy it. That one was kind of a pain to finish. But then directly after that, I jumped into The Har by David Sodergren. And wow, that book was a wacky amalgamation of thrill and gore and like sentient alien life. It was really cool. Really cool. I think it took place in Ireland or Scotland or somewhere. Either way, I read that one in a day. It was a short-ish read, 206 pages. Not bad. I did finish Oathbringer at the beginning of the month. So I started that at the end of September, finished it in October. That had my mind spinning the entire time. That book was, you cannot have my pain. This pain is my own. Dalinar, you pop off. Like, dude, holy cow. The Sanderlanche in that book, I think, as far as the Way of Kings and Words of Radiance goes, going into Oathbringer, the Sanderlanches kept getting better and better, and it reached that precipice at that point with Oathbringer being the greatest Sanderlanche. That was, oh man, I'm still not over it. And then I immediately went into Rhythm of War. I hate to speak too soon because I haven't read Wind and Truth yet, but that might be my favorite book in the Stormlight Archive so far. A lot of people didn't like it, and I don't understand the hate that it gets. Like, yes, Vinley is whiny and annoying, but there's a lot of character development and growth from her, and I really enjoyed that. Also, the interplay between Navani and Raboniel was really cool. Moash in this book was as infuriating as ever. There was a lot of heartbreak and emotion really stored up and welled in this book, and I genuinely geeked over it. It was awesome. I read Seagra's Roost, which is book 2 in the Titan's Nest saga by T.D. Orwell. That book was awesome. It's a Dragon Rider book. The first book was good. This book was even better. I don't want to say leaps and bounds better because T.D. is a very gifted and talented author, but this one just knocked it out of the park for me. I was just entranced the entire time, and I genuinely had such a great time with it. And then to go from that immediately into another Dragon Rider book of Darkness and Light by Ryan Cahill, that book was a mess. Like, that book emotionally was a mess. I read the first book in one sitting. That's been a reoccurring theme for me recently, is reading books in one sitting. I read that one. I read the first book in one sitting of Blood and Fire, and then of Darkness and Light, I spread that one out over a week and was really just drawn into the world. I really enjoyed it. I gave that one 5 stars too. I also gave Seagra's Roost 5 stars, Oathbringer 5 stars. The Har I gave 3.5 stars. It was really good. Another one of the sort of Halloween-esque thriller books that I read was The Inmate. Another one that I read in one sitting. That was a really short book. It's by Frida McFadden. Twist at the end was great, but throughout the entire thing, I couldn't help but thinking, man, this is just a remake of the movie Scream, just the way that everything unfolded. and how like the slasher style of it was. There's like, especially the flashback scenes in it. This is just a remake of Scream, which, not to knock it, like it was a decent book. I gave that one 3.5 stars because it did hook me. It had me interested, and the twist at the end was really good. I think the hardest book for me to read in the month of October was Twilight. That was bad. That was bad. I had a lot of people telling me to read Twilight, and then I gave into the peer pressure because basically one of my friends was like, Parker, you need to read Twilight. Parker, you need to read Twilight. You need to read Twilight. And I was like, no, I'm not going to read Twilight. It's on my do not read list. Like my do not read list is very short. It's Colleen Hoover and Twilight. And I think there's actually James Patterson and David Baldacci are on there too, just because I'm intimidated by the amount of books that they have. So like, how can all of them be good? But I digress there. But Colleen Hoover and Twilight were on my do not read list. And I was like, look, if you can find me a copy of Twilight for $5 or less, I will buy it and read it. Instantly got a link to a very like good condition copy of Twilight for $3. And I was like, well, I'm trapped now. And I read Twilight. It was probably the cringiest, most awkward book that I've ever read. And that's saying a lot. Not the worst book I read this year, not the best book I read this year. Well, I don't even think it reaches that middle ground. I did enjoy some parts of the story, but I did feel like Bella as a character was really bland, and I didn't appreciate that. There was no real growth within her. But I will say Edward and the Cullens were really cool. That was pretty cool. And I also thought the Blacks were going to be a bigger part of that story. I guess that happens later. On. I'm still trying to decide if I'll continue this series because I have this thing where I don't like starting a series and then not finishing it. It is what it is. But just to recap the best books that I read in the month of October, hands down the best was Rhythm of War, followed very closely by Of Darkness and Light and Ironbound. Such a great month for me reading wise. And looking at what I'm reading currently in the month of October, I had heard a lot about Empire of the Vampire and this new release that was coming out. A lot of people had been hyping it up, anticipating it. And I was like, I don't know what this is. I feel left out. So I started that series and actually started as it is a buddy read with one of my friends, because she loves this series and she wanted to, get a refresher before Empire of the Dawn came out. If I can pull it out over here. I went and bought it the other day, Empire of the Dawn. So we have that. So yeah, reading the Empire of the Vampire series. This, I was suffering greatly from post-traumatic Twilight disorder, and I needed a cleanser, and this Vampire series has been the cleanser that I needed. I loved it, like absolutely love it. First two books were great. Second book was better than the first and more emotional than the first. And I think I'm a little over 50% done with Empire of the Dawn so far. And yeah, it keeps getting better. It keeps getting more emotional and more, like the story just keeps deepening. And I really love the narrative style that Christoph has gone with here. It's very reminiscent of Interview with a Vampire. If you've ever read that book or seen that movie, it's the whole story is told as like the main character recounting everything that happened. And you obviously get jumps back to present day, but it's a different style of vampire book than what I'm used to, because like, I think before Twilight, the only vampire book that I had read was Dracula. And I read that academically for college. No, I read that for high school. Yeah. Greatly enjoying this series. It is so good. If you haven't read this series, if you haven't picked it up, I would actually highly recommend this series. I finished book one, and right after I finished book one of my friends was like, Parker, I just finished the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. What do I read next? And I was like, dude, you've got to trust me here. You have got to pick up this series, Empire of the Vampire. I know it sounds interesting and not like something that I would read that you would read, but dude, just trust me. It's worth it. And he was a bit iffy at first. And then he texted me yesterday and he was like, dude, I'm getting into it. I kind of like it. And I'm like, yeah, dude, I told you would like it. This series is ridiculously good. And I'm loving it. So I'm very excited to finish this book. After I finish Empire of the Dawn, I will go and read Wind and Truth. I will go read Wind and Truth because I want to have the entirety of the Stormlight Archive done before December, because I'm going to Dragonsteel Nexus at the beginning of December in Utah. So I want to have at least the Stormlight Archive done, because that's like the only Sanderson that I've read. So yeah, my current reads are looking great. I'm having a really fun time with everything that I'm reading currently, what I have read. This journey is simply amazing, and I love it so much. I'm having such a great time on it, such a great time exploring new books. I mean, I have had, like I said, the best time with the Empire of the Vampire series, and I never thought that I would be that into vampire stories. Yet here I am, and I'm loving it. I never thought that I would get into epic fantasy or grimdark or any of these books that I've gotten into recently, and I'm really grateful for this journey, for everything that, this community has brought me, and I'm really excited to keep it going. I'm really excited for the journey and the story and the content, the memories, the laughter, everything. I'm excited for everything to continue. So, this episode was a little bit longer than I expected, but that's kind of what happens when I get on a roll and I start talking. It's something that I love doing, and especially with something like books, something that I'm passionate about, and I know that you are probably passionate about it as well, something that we can bond over. And I think this is just a great platform to be able to bond over that, to explore that together, and to invite other people along with us, to get a look inside of their minds, to get a look inside of authors' minds, creatives' minds, people in this space. Let's build a community. Let's continue to build one another up in this community. I'm excited for what's to come. I'm excited for all of this to continue. I really hope that you enjoyed the first episode of Dog-Eared. It's been a long time coming, like I said, and I couldn't be any more excited and happy to finally have this up and running, to finally have this space. It's a great feeling. It really is a great feeling. So, I'm never sure how to end these things. Like, I'm genuinely never sure how to end a podcast. But that's all I've got for you today. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. This one was a little bit all over the place, I know, but we'll have some more fun coming soon. But yeah, that's all for me today. Love you guys.